Good afternoon. We will now convene the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, October 1st at 3:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman ClarkHubbard. Vice Chair Schweitzer. Present. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Cox-Entwee. Chair Browning.
Present.
Alderman Devoti. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will move on to item number 3, which is approval of the minutes. I will accept a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, September 24th.
So moved.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by, I think, the Alderwoman from the 13th. And Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Alderwoman Boyd. Aye. Alderwoman ClarkHubbard. Aye. Vice Chair Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Cox-Entwee. Aye. Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderman Devoti. We have 5 aye votes.
Thank you. With that, we will dispense with that item and move to item number 4, board bills for review. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to just let you know that we do have 3 board bills we get through before we get to the discussion of resolution 111. We will try to move quickly because I know you're all eager to testify. If you wish to testify on any of these items or on the resolution, you can sign up with the clerk over here and we will call you in order. We're going to give everyone 2 minutes to testify today instead of 3 because of the number of people here. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So Alderman Oldenburg, you are recognized on board bill number 71.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I appreciate you allowing me to go first. I know you have a packed agenda today, so I'll get right to it. Board Bill 71 is the pretty comfortable and familiar speed hump bill going at various locations in the 2nd Ward. So I look for favorable consideration. If there's any pressing questions on the speed hump bill ordinance here, I'm happy to take them, but would look for a swift vote out of committee on Board Bill 71.
Thank you. We'll go through the committee to see if there's any questions, and we'll start with order of seniority, Alderwoman Boyd. Thank you. Alderwoman ClarkHubbard. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
No questions.
Alderwoman Cox-Entwee. I also have no questions. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for public comment on this board bill?
We do not.
With that, Alderman, you are recognized to close.
I'll look for a motion to pass it out. Nothing further.
This time, I'll accept a motion for a due pass recommendation of Board Bill 71.
So moved. Second. Previous roll.
Moved by the Alderman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderman from the 8th. Call for previous roll. Hearing no objection. Congratulations, Alderman. Moving on, Board Bill 72. Alderman Oldenburg, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board Bill 72 is your standard honorary street name, right? We're not renaming Nottingham Avenue, but instead we are putting an individual who was taken from us in the 2nd Ward far too soon. And in order to honor his legacy, his name, and give him tribute, many of the neighbors in the 2nd Ward decided that we could do this with the honorary namesake to the Nottingham Avenue block to which he lived, and this is a board bill that effectuates that.
Thank you, Alderman. We'll go through committee to see if anyone has any questions. Alderwoman Boyd?
No questions.
Alderwoman ClarkHubbard? Did you get that?
So noted.
Thank you. Alderwoman Schweitzer?
No questions, but I am sorry for your loss, Alderman, or the loss of the community. Thank you.
Alderman Devoti?
No questions. Please add me as a co-sponsor.
So noted.
Alderwoman Cox-Entwee?
No questions, and sorry for your loss, Alderman.
I also have no questions and would also like to be added as a co-sponsor. And
So noted.
Madam Clerk, are there any public testimony on this bill?
There is not.
With that, Alderman, you are recognized to close.
Nothing further, Mr. Chair. I also would look for a motion to pass this one out as well.
All right, at this time, I'll accept a motion for a due pass recommendation for Board Bill number 72.
So moved.
Previous row.
Objection.
No, please.
So moved by the Alderman from the first, seconded by, didn't catch who, Alderman ClarkHubbard from the 10th. And Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman ClarkHubbard. Vice Chair Switzer,
Aye.
Alderman Devoti,
Aye.
Alderwoman Cox-Santui,
Aye.
Chair Browning.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes.
Thank you. With that, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is Board Bill 73. Alderman Aldridge, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Pew Committee. Today, I present to you Board Bill 73. Board Bill 73 is a vacation of alley in the 14th Ward. This alley sits between 13th Street, between Cole and Dr. King. It is a 12-foot vacation of vacating the street for hopefully some great future plans and development that's coming to the 14th in the near future. I do have one person, Mr. Berglund from the old post building, that will come and just say some quick words about the vacation if he wants to come on up.
Thank you. Mr. Was it Berglund? Thank you. You are now recognized to speak.
Thank you. My name is John Berglund. I'm, as Alderman Aldridge said, the developer of the former Post Dispatch building, and we own the property in question. And the vacation will allow us to consolidate parcels and provide improved security and parking for the tenants of our building. One of the questions that we see the most is, where do I park? And it become, getting the similar parking ratios as in the county is always an issue. So this will help us facilitate and potential future developments should they occur.
Thank you. With that, we'll see if the committee has any questions. Alderwoman Boyd?
No question.
Alderwoman ClarkHubbard? Alderwoman Schweitzer?
Thank you very much. The board bill summary says the vacated area will be used to consolidate property for construction of the athletic field and future stadium
Yes, that
parking.
will be most likely a cleanup on the floor to take out the athletic stadium in the field. There is no athletic stadium of the field. We did catch that on the front end, so there will be a amendment or a floor sub just to strike that out. This is just to do the vacation. There was an error between drafting it and the city of St. Louis. So.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're,
No new stadium coming.
yes, what's happening? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I look forward to, if that's not done on the floor, I won't support the bill, but if it is, it's great.
I always love your support, Alderwoman, and I can't have it without you, so I will make sure that is cleaned up.
Thank you so much, Alderman.
Alderman Devoti?
No questions.
Alderwoman Cox-Santui?
No questions.
I also have no questions. Alderman, well, one second. Do we have any public testimony?
We have none.
Okay. Alderman, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I would ask for a due pass recommendation on Board Bill 7.
With that, I will accept a due pass recommendation for Board Bill number 73.
So moved.
Excuse me. Mr. Connolly is online.
Okay.
Oh. Mr. Connolly,
Let me move him over.
when you're moved over, please turn on your camera and raise your right hand so we can. All right, we can see you now, Mr. Connolly. If you could raise your right hand. And do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Very good. I'm not speaking for or against this particular bill, but I did want to raise some questions that I think it would be in the committee's best interest to have clarified before they take a vote. Well, question one is Mr. Berglund's company going to be paying the city for the property once it's vacated? And secondly, if you could clarify how many current taxing districts that this property is located in. To the best of my knowledge, it's in the newly formed Downtown North Community Improvement District. It's in the expanded Port Authority District, I believe. And I think that might be it, but at the same time, we've got some mechanisms in place that lay the groundwork for incentives. And I don't really see, I don't know what the capacity is required for the post building in terms of parking. But given the fact that a lot of Square workers are working remotely, I would like to have that verified that they are at full capacity on their current parking before we go ahead and, because once this is done, it's going to be, a protracted process to undo it if the developer's plans don't come to fruition. So those are my comments. I'd appreciate you guys looking into the answers to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman, do you care to address any of those points, or?
Yeah, I would say typically I know when we've done street vacation, I've actually done one before. I don't think the city goes into an agreement with the vacationer who owns it if there's a payment made between them. Secondly, yes, I think this sits in one of the new SIDs that was developed. As somebody who actually grew up in Carr Square and represents this area, this part of 13th Street is actually not really used. We do use a lot of the Cole Street, and we use kind of the Dr. King, but this 13th Street, I mean, again, from being a kid to actually driving in and throughout my ward, this part of 13th Street is really not used. It will be used, as Mr. Berglund said, for parking. And there are some ongoing conversations as there's a lot of momentum happening in the 14th Ward around the NGA and bringing in future development to hopefully do potential development in this area where this part of the street will be helpful for those developments that happen. So again, I don't think when we've done vacations, we've paid the city for that. And as much as I know, this just sits in the one new SID that the Board of Aldermen passed. But again, this 13th Street is not utilized at all from residents or people that drive in and out of the city. Most of them use 14th Street. They use Tucker. They use maybe Cole if they're coming from the highway or going to the highway, as well as Dr. King turning east or turning north to south on 14th and also turning north to south on Tucker.
Thank you for that. Given that new information, does anyone on the committee have any additional questions? Not seeing any. There's been a motion and a second, motioned by, I think, the Alderman from the 1st and seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any call for previous roll?
I think Alderman Boyd.
Alderman Boyd, I think, called for previous roll. Hearing no objection to that, this bill has passed. Congratulations, Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that, we will go ahead and dispense with item number 4, move to item number 5, resolutions for review. Alderman Schweitzer, you are recognized on resolution number 111.
Thank you so much, Chairman Browning and members of the committee for hearing this today. And thank you also to all the members of the public who have come today. We have the presentation being pulled up, and as soon as it's full screen, we'll get going. Take your time. Thank you. I'll take this moment just to say if you are here to speak on this bill, or resolution rather, please do make sure you're signed up so we can hear from you. Just to get going, to keep us moving, this first thing I want to say about the resolution is that it is a resolution that mirrors Executive Order 92, which was signed by Mayor Spencer a few weeks ago, and that outlines the regulatory framework, sort of the beginning of the regulatory process for data centers. What this resolution does is that if passed, it would affirm the Board of Aldermen's support for enacting clear, concise, thoughtful regulations within the 5-month timeframe outlined in the executive order, as well as puts in conditions that need to be followed now during the conditional use process. We'll go more deeply into both the resolution and the executive order, which again really mirror each other as we move. If we can go to the next slide, please. Can you go to the next slide, please, Madam Clerk? Thank you. To set up the stage for the presentation today, the wonderful folks, the Sustainability Director, Alicia Russell, and the Planning Executive, Miriam Keller, will be giving a presentation on the context of data centers in St. Louis now. Then I will speak, and also Policy Director / Chief of Staff / I don't even know, City Resident Extraordinaire, Casey Milberg, will give more information on the executive order and the Resolution 111. And then we'll hear more about the regulatory framework that is outlined, or beginning of which is outlined in executive order and the resolution. And then we'll move on to, I think, the reason that most of us are here today, which is to hear from the public. Again, really happy that people are here to talk. And then we'll go to questions of the committee, as long as that order looks good to the chairman. From that, we'll move, and I'll let Ms. Keller and Ms. Russell come up and give the beginning of the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Keller and Ms. Russell. It's good to see you. We appreciate all the work you do for our city. There's no need to swear you in as city employees, and you are now recognized to begin the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. We'll be providing, just as the Alderman said, some context and kind of what we know so far about this use from our research. We're still learning new things every day, but we're providing a little bit of grounding information based on our understanding. So quickly, so data centers are facilities that store data and provide compute power for all sorts of functions that I think many of us use every day, whether on our phone. It is truly the global AI boom that is in part fueling the very rapid development of data centers and the growing need for data processing power across the globe and in the United States. Just a number to put a little bit of a scale to the investment that is being made and projected. McKinsey estimates a $7 trillion investment globally by 2030, which is really not that far away. Next slide, please. There are many types and sizes and functions of data centers. They're not all the same. There are corporate or enterprise data centers that are really for a single user. There are co-location or kind of large co-location wholesale data centers that function a little bit differently, sort of leasing out space for many different users. There are telecom data centers, and there are hyperscale data centers, which are the kind that are sort of designed to scale resources and compute power up and down to grow with the kind of unique demands of often very large single customers like the major tech companies, Google, Amazon. Next slide, please. There are many data centers in St. Louis today. Here's a map of many of them. I don't believe all of them, but many are located downtown, at least 12, some actually sharing the same address, but separately permitted and operating. And of course, there is one active application at 500 Prospect, which is the parking lot next to the Armory. And then there has been information, of course, about a proposal of converting the Armory building itself into a data center and office building. There is no application yet submitted for conversion of that building specifically. Next slide, please. They come in many shapes and sizes. Most that exist in the city today have been adaptive reuse of existing buildings we walk by every day. Some downtown, you can see the Neutrality building on the lower left. Others recently under development on Locust. Also low-slung, kind of formerly industrial buildings on Shodo. And then I also included an example of a larger, newer construction one, Tier Point out in Maryland Heights, just to give you a sense of These vary in their size, design, function. Next slide. I did want to provide a little bit of context about how these were kind of being regulated as permits came into the city before Executive Order 92 was established. So, this is, by the way, where we were as of 2 weeks ago and not where we want to be long term. But, prior to Executive Order 92, they were not specifically defined, and they were treated as the most appropriate existing defined designation on our zoning code, which is warehousing, kind of warehousing of data. You can think of it that way. And it was being handled as a conditional use in generally commercial and mixed use districts, so where warehousing was treated as a conditional use, which requires special consideration given the context of a site, and it's a discretionary approval. But warehousing is permitted by right in certain districts, like downtown, which is the I district, kind of the L district around the Arch, and also in industrial districts, districts J and K in our current code. And also, before Executive Order 92, there was no specific approach to evaluating them as conditional uses, even when they did go through that conditional use process. So I just wanted to provide that grounding of kind of the state of things prior to Executive Order 92 before handing it back to the Alderman.
So where we were, where the city was not a good place for regulating data centers, and I think we can all agree with that. I hope we can at least. And so with Executive Order 92 and where we are now, just a few short weeks later, there are conditions in place for data centers and a regulatory framework that is beginning to be established. Some of the important things that Executive Order 92 and this mirroring resolution do are the following that I think are very important. One, it's directing city officials to establish those regulations under some specific guidelines, which I'll discuss later, and the planning department will go more in depth on. The water division is directed to look at water rates, the water infrastructure, and more around data center usage of this incredibly important resource we have. And I have highlighted here that it does, in this current executive order and this resolution that mirrors it, prohibits data centers from being permitted by right in any district. If you looked at that map and saw those data centers downtown, many of them were permitted by right, which means that, or all of them, so they never had to go through a conditional use process at all. They were permitted as warehouses. That is no longer the case as of the executive order. There will not be a data center that is going into play in St. Louis from this point forward that does not have a public hearing. And I just think that is so crucial and such a big change from just 2 weeks ago that I wanted that was highlighted and really understood by everyone who's listening today. The conditional use process and the questions answered, over 40 questions, that any data center applicant would be required to provide to have a conditional hearing. To have that conditional use hearing is outlined in the executive order in this mirroring resolution. And then both the executive order and resolution affirm the support of these regulations created and provides a timeline for those. This has already seen results. We've already seen how this executive order has changed some of the outcomes that have been in front of the city of St. Louis around data centers. Just last week, the project, the people working on the Armory data center asked for a continuance on their conditional use hearing, citing needing more time to be able to adhere to the terms, the questions asked in the conditional use process. So I think that is an important thing to bring up. While we're talking about Resolution 111 and this specific executive order, I think seeing how what we do here at City Hall and how it results in what happens and the conditions that happen are really important. Just next slide, please. So the expanded information requirement in the conditional use hearing, again, over 40 different things that need to be discussed, that need to be answered by the petitioner. Some of them are outlined here. You'll see environmental uses, land use uses. There is an economic impact section, point by point. If you look at Resolution 111, you'll see those various questions that are asked. Next slide. And then including in this executive order and the resolution is the considerations for the regulations. In just a moment, our planning department staff will come back and talk more about these specific things that are being investigated by staff at the city around these topics. But these are all the things that are required by Mayor Spencer's executive order that need to be addressed in any regulations that we have going forward. And I would also, just at this time, if the Chief of Staff, Casey Milberg, has anything she'd like to add, welcome her to come up. But that really gives the outline of what the executive order and then this resolution that affirms it does. And I'll just pass it over to Ms. Milberg for just a moment to give any additional context.
Thank you, and good afternoon. For the record, Casey Milberg, Chief of Staff to Mayor Spencer. I know there's a lot of people here today who took time out of their schedule, so I will keep my comments brief. But start with a note of thanks, first and foremost, for our planning and zoning staff for the tremendous work they put in. What folks in this room may not realize is that how we got to this point was months in the making. Our planning and zoning staff were directed by the Planning Commission back in April to really dig into this issue because of how emergent it was. So that was the foundation that they laid. They presented their recommendations to the Planning Commission earlier this fall, and they reviewed that information. The conversation, the questions that they asked during it were really remarkable and robust. And for the folks in this room who haven't yet had the opportunity to go and watch that, I encourage you to. I think it is a great demonstration of how thoughtful the city government is, how thoughtful that body is, and the foundation that laid for this executive order, and just the topics that emerged of this is the kind of information that we don't have, that we need to find a way to have, and we need to figure out how to build rapidly. So I do want to make sure that we're thoughtful in thanking them. And of course, our sustainability director back here, Alicia Russell, was also an integral part of that too. At the end of the day, where we are at right now is a result of a tremendous amount of thoughtful conversation, and it is still just a starting point. And that's important to acknowledge. It's why everyone is here today. There's been a tremendous amount of input and collaboration to get us to this point so far, and that is going to continue. This is a conversation about how we use our land. What is the future of this city? How are we going to get there? How are we going to protect and allocate our resources? How do we want to innovate? So many questions are attendant within this, and it is such an important conversation. This is a sector that has grown so rapidly in so many ways in our community, whether it's a data center or some of the firms that have relocated here to take advantage of the existing data centers, which has already happened for several years. Whether you are concerned about the resource implications on our city's water infrastructure, our energy code, if you just generally have questions about that and you don't know where to begin, those are all extremely important questions that this executive order, that this resolution, that this conversation today is designed to encompass and make space for. So ending as well with a tremendous amount of thanks for this body for taking time out today to make space for all the people in this room today. And as well as our offices, thanks for everyone who came out today to share their perspective as well. We're grateful for it, we're paying attention, and we look forward to continuing to hear the feedback from the community. Thank you.
Next slide. Now we'll turn it back over to the planning division staff to talk about the questions and the considerations that will inform those suggested regulation framework.
Great, thank you. So our task now is to learn as much as we can, as quickly as we can about this use so that we can recommend appropriate regulations, just as the Alderwoman said. So what I'm going to, and Alicia and I both share today are high level, some of the things we understand so far that are informing our development of regulations, in addition to studying the work of other communities that are similarly grappling with this question. So we're going to quickly talk about land use considerations, environmental considerations, economic considerations that are informing the regulations and that we will continue to research. Next slide, please. Next again. Thank you. Yeah, great, thank you. So On the land use front, land use impacts, larger data centers and those with the more intensive functions really elevate the heat in the space, and they require more cooling and backup generator equipment that can create both noise and contribute to air pollution when generators are in use. In many cases, generators are intended to be backup as a means to plan for times when the grids can't deliver appropriate energy. The experience in other communities has been sometimes they end up in use more frequently than expected. From a land use and urbanism perspective, data centers do contribute little in the way of vibrancy, and that's for a couple of reasons. There are few permanent jobs, which means there are just not that many people entering and exiting a use over the course of the day, and some just require intensive security. Our data does need to be secure, and that is often a requirement of companies interested in the server capacity of a data center. Single-purpose data center facilities can successfully be incorporated into industrial districts, but I think something we're interested in exploring is the potential for a floor or two of servers to be integrated into larger development and actually kind of making possible that larger development and perhaps increasing the marketability of a larger development for tech companies and other office users. Next slide. I'm going to hand it to Alicia to kind of talk us through the parts of a data center and how those relate to the land use.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So on the screen here, we have just like a basic diagram of a data center. So they need to be in a place with access to water and fiber infrastructure. It's going to be in a fenced-off area. So in the center, you have the data center itself with its cooling equipment, either on top of the building or in the rear. You're going to have backup generators along one side of it in the yard. And then usually they're going to be close to a substation for that electrical power, which connects to the transmission lines. And then in terms of like the people power or the people working constantly in the data center, you're going to have a facility manager, security on site, an IT professional or engineer to help manage the servers and make sure everything's running in optimal condition. And then we have a few pictures, if you click through, that show what substations look like alongside a data center in Virginia. An example of the cooling equipment that could be used there could be a cooling tower situation or air handlers, and then examples of diesel generators. So in the environmental considerations that we'll go through, I mean, beyond just noise pollution, air quality, and the potential impacts on biodiversity, data centers use an enormous amount of energy. Most of that energy is going towards actually cooling the system itself, with the next biggest portion to actually run the servers. We know that it seems like when a data center uses more electricity, it's going to use less water, and then vice versa. So if it's going to use water for equipment, then it'll use less electricity. And then we have seen some creative projects where waste heat has been captured to meet other needs, but there's limited applications to this. And when we think about the scale of energy, for example, to put something into context, a 100,000 square foot data center could use at least 100 megawatts of power. And that's enough energy to power 18,000 homes for a year. Next slide. So this creates a challenge for our utilities to meet the energy needs of data centers and our residents, and then lock in those long-term agreements with data centers. So this means we need new power generation or transmission infrastructure, and currently those costs are paid by the ratepayers. There are new state regulations that allow utilities to charge ratepayers for construction of new power generation before they're actually completed and generating energy. This bill also is calling for large load customer tariffs, and that's for like a special rate for business entities that are asking for greater than 100 megawatts at the transmission level. So what we've seen in other communities, that this is contributing at an unknown level to rising electrical bills for residents and businesses. And then we'll move back to the the economic consideration.
So yeah, quickly, sort of the third piece of this, what data centers mean for our economy. I've mentioned that they do generate very few permanent jobs directly associated with the facility and its operation itself. So for example, for a roughly 100,000 square foot facility, you might have 10 people at any given time in those jobs that Alicia was describing operating the facility, but they do rotate in shifts to ensure successful operation of the data center throughout the day. So there may be few very direct permanent jobs on site. They are high wage. These are pretty well-paying jobs. I think the more, the other job side of the coin is construction jobs in data centers. These are very capital-intensive facilities, so there is a lot of very specialized construction labor that is part of the upfront construction period. And because these facilities often need upgrades, some of those construction jobs do replenish. So there are construction jobs even as part of the need for recurring upgrades. Next slide, please. And finally, the experience in some other communities is that there is the potential to generate large amounts of tax revenue. In the state of Missouri, there are some state-level exemptions for data centers specifically from sales and utility taxes. I think another thing that's kind of connects back to the land use conversation, but there's this potential for, where server space can be mixed in with other uses, the potential for these server functions to cross-subsidize other types of desired development. Can you flip back real quickly? Yeah, thank you. And as mentioned by Chief of Staff Milberg, having this reliable compute power in our region is one factor among others, but one factor in attracting and retaining companies that really need that compute power for their work. And then I do just want to mention the sort of indirect multiplier benefits of employment and construction, the same as really any other use, that people with these jobs pay for other services in our community. There's construction equipment and other materials that are needed for the development, and there are some other ripple impacts in our economy. Next slide, thank you.
Thank you so much for that informative presentation. So just to bring us back to the piece of the executive order and the resolution that talks about the considerations required for regulations, I hope that that presentation showed you why there are so many things that need regulation. There's a lot of considerations around land use, the environment, the economy, and what is coming before us today in terms of data centers. We do need to have some standards in place, regulations in place, know what is coming into our community, know how it's going to affect our community in so many different ways. And so those are the reasons why those listed considerations are in the executive order and the resolution, and why we wanted to just go a little deeper into what those considerations are and what our very thoughtful folks here in the city planning department are looking at. So next slide, please. We're going to get a new clicker. That's my solemn vow to everyone in this room. Okay, with that, there's a lot of people in this room who want to talk about this issue, and while I've talked to many people in this room, I of course haven't talked to everyone in this room, but I imagine some people's comments are going to be about data center regulations in general. Some might be on this specific resolution. Some might have things that they want to share about maybe the Armory project or a data center that's near them that they want to give feedback on. I would argue that anything about data centers is germane to this conversation and what we're accepting comments on today. But I do think that it's important to note that if people are here to talk about a specific project, This comment counts for this hearing. If you're interested in a specific project, you need to make sure to get your comments to the appropriate conditional use hearing or hearing regarding that particular project, because that is how the consideration of comments works for those sorts of hearings. So I just want to make that clear. And then I thought, normally when we have this many people who want to speak, we usually do public comment first and then questions from the committee. And I turn it over to you, Chairman Browning, to run the rest of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderwoman Schweitzer. I would echo those comments. We try to speak to the resolution if you can, but we will welcome comments on the topic in general, understanding that there's a lot to cover here. Also want to call attention to that the developer of the Armory project is hosting their own engagement. 2 dates have been announced for that, one on Zoom and one in person. So that's there's I think a Post-Dispatch article that has the dates for that. So if you'd like to speak directly to the developer of that project, that's the place to do that. And then the conditional use hearing for that project has not been scheduled yet. It was delayed and there is not a new date yet. So keep an eye out for that, because that would be your chance to speak specifically to the city about that specific proposal for the Armory site. With that, we will go ahead and proceed with public comment. A reminder to everybody that we're going to limit comment to 2 minutes so that we can get through everyone today and so that we're not here tonight. And we also need to swear all of you in. So if you are planning on speaking, whether you're online or whether you're here in person, please, we're just going to do this all together. So please raise your right hand. Do you all swear to tell the truth and the whole truth? All right, thank you all. With that, if you're online and you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. We will try to alternate through this, and I'm going to hand it over to our clerk at this time to call through our public testimony. Reminder, if you haven't signed up to testify, you do need to do that if you're in, and if you're online, again, you can raise your hand. Madam Clerk?
Our first speaker is Michael Durham.
Hello, and thank you. I'm not here to speak on behalf of or against data centers as a whole. I'm here to speak about the fact that it shouldn't be so black or white. I think this issue is a location issue, not an existence issue. It's not a for-profit prison. You're not for the prison system because it's in Idaho and not here. You're against it because it exists itself. Well, data centers are going to exist. They're going to build them. The St. Charles one will get built. Something else will get built too. So it comes down to, where can we build these things? Can we build them here? Are we doing it responsibly? That's the question. So anyone who comes up here and says no more data centers, which is what got me interested in this because of a Reddit post, I was like, well, just none? We're just not going to have them? So my point here is that the discussion needs to stop being about these people, these developers, this. This is crucial new infrastructure. We shouldn't fear it. We shouldn't burn the witch that came up with it like fire or the wheel. It's the new infrastructure that's going to feed the old infrastructure. Traffic mitigation, hospital expansion, Barnes Jewish, SLUs, all of this stuff. The new NGA building, which will need a lot of data. The NGA, which saved my life while I was in the military. So these are all crucial infrastructure. So our question here is, do we want to let somebody out in Lincoln County take all the construction jobs and do it out there? And then they're just going to pump in the energy from out there to here? Ameren's going to build it somewhere, and they're going to defer the cost to us regardless. So how about we get some tax incentive? How about we keep something in the city? And how about we put it wherever, I don't know where they're going to put it, but close to a power line, I don't know, maybe the Central Corridor? We fit a Topgolf in there without tearing that much down. That's crazy. The city's 200 years old. That should have been filled with businesses. We have the space, and you can't hear anything. It's a highway.
Thank you.
How do I turn that off? Wow, that's annoying. Okay. Thank you. New technology, we're still working with it. Thank you for that comment. And if you could, when you stand up here, if you could tell us what ward you live in, or if you don't live in the city, just say that. We'd appreciate knowing where this testimony is coming from. It helps us understand, as your representatives, which of our constituents are here today and care about this issue. So with that, Madam Clerk, you can call the next speaker.
Armand Walker online. Mr. Walker, if you can turn your camera and mic on, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please
All right,
start.
hello. My name is Armand Walker. I'm in Ward 2, and I am also a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I am speaking in opposition of Resolution 111 because I feel that it is inadequate. It is not enough just to put restrictions on these data centers. It's something that, as was laid out in the presentation, is clearly going to have a lot of issues with the way that it is draining our water supply, and it is straining the electricity grids. And frankly, it is not something that working class people need, right? There's a lot of other things that we could be building, a lot of other places we could be putting these resources. The vague promises of jobs simply is not enough to justify bringing in something that is going to ultimately be a detriment to the city. And it's my understanding too that this is a $1.5 billion project, and that is money that can be used in a million other places, but in particular the north side to rebuild after the tornado. We could be rebuilding people's homes. We could be setting up ways that provide direct aid to the people who need it the most, right? Water, food, other immediate needs that people are still in desperate need of, rather than trying to build these data centers, whether that's at the Army or anywhere else. So that's the main thing that I want to emphasize, that we're unconvinced that this is something that is worthy of the time and attention of the people of St. Louis, and that it is not going to be to our benefit as working class people. So that's all I want to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Maggie Cost.
Maggie Coast, I'm here with Greater St. Louis Inc., and I lead the business attraction team working to get businesses to come into the 15-county metro, including the city of St. Louis. I also worked at the state when we attracted Meta and Google to Kansas City. And I want to say that just a few things on the dialogue today. You know, in economic development, we are hardwired to think of job creation as the core metric for whether or not a project is valuable to a city. But I think these projects are a little bit different, as has been pointed out before. It's not just about how many jobs and having a huge project here. Don't get me wrong. High-wage tech jobs are good for our city. They are good for our community. But this is also about infrastructure, critical infrastructure for innovation that is happening in our communities. And I know other speakers will talk a little bit more about that. The other thing that I wanted to note here today is that the fiscal impact of these projects can really be tremendous. And I hope that that's something to take into consideration through the course of this project. One of the last times that I spoke before a committee here and testified, one of the other folks that spoke mentioned how we are a poor city. Those were her exact words. She talked about how we can't afford critical infrastructure, basic infrastructure improvements, how we can't afford to invest in our schools and other things that would help people in need in our community. These projects, especially when you talk about the magnitude, the scale of project that we were talking about before, could bring tens of millions of dollars in new revenue that you can invest into programs. The last thing that I want to mention here is that we're painting, in the public discourse on this, we're painting with very broad brushes. And not all data centers are created equal. Some are very small. They might be a floor in a building. Others might require hundreds of megawatts. So just keep that in mind as you make decisions about these projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay Holtman online.
Hey, give me just one moment here. Are you able to hear me?
Could you please turn your camera on?
Now we can see you.
Yeah. Sorry, I just switched to a different camera. So I would just like to say that I also don't think that this is critical for our city. There's a lot of other places that these resources could be allocated to that would be much better well spent. I mean, schools were mentioned, and I do think like investing in our people is going to give us like a higher long-term input, and this is going to put a strain on our infrastructure. Data centers, I understand like the size matters, but regardless, it is going to put a strain on our infrastructure, on our water, and on our power, and all of that. It does matter. This is not necessarily something that we have to have here. And if we're going to allocate resources, there's much better places that we could allocate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Berglund, in line. I'm sorry, in person.
Hi, my name is John Berglund. I'm a developer of the former Post-Dispatch building and also representing Downtown North, which represents the Globe, as well as a Railway Exchange building, T-Rex formerly. What I want to do is give the perspective of the developer side of things. I think the clock's wrong. It says I got 40 seconds.
Please continue.
Okay. And one of the things that the developer looks for is certainty. Okay, and in terms of regulation, so that as you get in there, that you understand what's being done and to avoid overly complicated red tape. I would agree with the first speaker who said that these are going to go somewhere. We all benefit from them, and the question is where. So you take something like a K, that is an unrestricted area, that is an industrial area, and then putting additional regulation on top of that. I would also say that most people probably weren't aware that there were a dozen data centers, and these tend to be fairly, go about their business, and they attract other businesses in the area. And so the tech is very important as far as looking forward and attracting other businesses to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay Emmert, online.
Hi. So I am in Ward 2, and I just wanted to second what Armin was saying about the resources in St. Louis. Ameren shut off roughly 18,000 homes from electric last month in September, and that was due to Ameren and energy bills, and we simply cannot afford it. The working class cannot afford this. As a social worker in the city of St. Louis, I think that we could really use this building for more community. Like, honestly, we really need more homeless shelters and beds for people in the winter. We need more space for people to go. I also wanted to bring up that there's really no way for them to like project how much this will cost us. And in terms of the pollution and the strain on our resources, I grew up in Bridgeton, right next to the Westlake landfill, where people suffer with so many detriments from that, and the government taking advantage of just the space and resources that were there before, and covering it up. I would like to see that space used for something that will help us not strain our resources and hurt the community in it. That's it.
Thank you.
Mark Munzel.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Munsell. I've worked in the city for 30 years, recently retired from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, where I had positions like the Chief Technology Officer and the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer. I've also have experience building some of the world's largest data centers for the world's largest government agency. I don't think it's lost on anyone here how important having data centers are to our economy, to our citizenship. People use data centers all the time for watching Netflix, for playing video games, for doing QuickBooks. to watching YouTube videos. Why is it important that they are nearby? It's something called latency. For those of you that understand physics, it's super important to have the sort of speed of light be accessible very quickly to your data and to your compute nearby. There are thousands of other use cases. I will highlight two. Many companies in the city run what's called a virtual desktop, and that's a desktop where they don't actually have the machine there. They virtually run their desktop machine at a data center. That reduces the footprint of the actual hardware, that lowers the amount of power used, and is much more beneficial to the environment. Another example is building AI models. I'll just say that the geospatial community here in St. Louis has researchers that are working on AI models to improve food security, agricultural modeling, climate impact and sustainability modeling, and of course, national security. As we attract more geospatial technology firms here, they need to have hyperscale compute. They need to have it nearby in a very low latency so they can test and train their models. I will say the last thing that we need to do is signal to the investors of the new digital economy that we are not interested in participating in that economy. So not only do the citizens, businesses, universities need access to powerful nearby compute and storage, but we need to signal to the country, these American companies, that we appreciate their investment.
Thank you. And did you say, were you in the city or are you?
30 years working in the city.
Thank you.
Melinda Long, online. Michael Snyder, online.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Michael Snyder. I am a technical writer for Siemens PLM. I live out in the county, but I deeply love my city. I am in opposition of this resolution because it is frankly not strong enough. I was hoping for a moratorium on all data centers. I knew we had several in St. Louis already, and looking at the current landscape of what we are seeing other cities dealing with when it comes to data centers, it seems frankly irresponsible. Between Iowa, Georgia, Indianapolis, Texas, and even the county has rejected this. I understand that this is potentially lucrative in the abstract, but if this bubble pops, we are left with something that is an environmental drain. And I would really strongly consider that we put forth this resource into literally anything else than data centers at this time.
Thank you.
Jake Hummel, Ward 1.
Thank you, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, for the record, Jake Hummel, representing as president of the Missouri AFL-CIO, a coalition of labor unions across the state of Missouri. We represent several 100,000 union members and their families, both in the city of St. Louis and outside. I'm here today to just caution on how we go forward to ensure that we don't suggest to these developers that we are closed for business. I think it is perfectly reasonable, whether the developers like it or not, perfectly reasonable to set some guardrails in place for the city of St. Louis, for their citizens, to come up with things that will make everyone feel more comfortable, but also send the message that we are not closed for business. Every one of my construction workers makes over $100,000 a year in wage benefits. Can we really afford to turn down hundreds and thousands of construction jobs? Just recently, I left Kansas City, where one of the data centers going up now utilizes one of my pre-apprenticeship construction programs, similar to the BUD program I heard about. On that project, they are completely paying for that group. What happens is those students that go directly to work on that data center may never have to leave for their entire career.
Ms. Long, could you mute yourself, please? Mr. Hummel, apologies.
I'm waiting. Forget.
All right, please proceed.
Okay, I'll be very brief. They may never have to leave those jobs for the rest of their careers. Unlike every other construction job that there is around. They can start their careers, as was stated earlier, there's constantly new technology that happens. As those jobs and those buildings create these construction jobs, it's not just the folks that work in them. They're constantly needing to be refreshed. They're constantly needed to be upgraded. And those people can stay on those jobs and never leave for their entire career from start to finish in one project. And I think there's plenty of opportunities for residents of the city of St. Louis to partake of that. And I just urge you to be cautious on what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melinda Long online.
Ms. Long, if you could turn on your camera.
Paris Brown online.
Melinda Long here.
Oh. All right, Melinda, go ahead.
Thank you. You see, I'm not a computer genius like those data people are. Thank you, Melinda Long.
Are you able to turn on your camera? We do require your camera to be on for public testimony.
Well, in all sincerity, I'm doing this through my phone, and I'm not that computer literate. I know I can speak and I can see you, but yes.
If you could put your number in the chat, we'll go ahead and you could proceed now. But if you could just put your number in the chat, we'd appreciate it.
I sure will. Okay. I understand now we are speaking about, this is not a board bill. This is an executive order resolution that will give guidelines to the Board of Adjustments and the Public Planning Division on what they can request, what they are required to request for the applicants who want to open up these data centers. But what I am quite concerned about is the fact that that this resolution is not, it still needs a little bit more tweaking to it. For example, it does not speak about the maximum number of data centers that should be allowed here in the St. Louis metro area. Or if not just the number of data centers, the type of usage some type of conditions for these centers, and the qualifications. The reason being because, for example, I just participated in a planning division meeting 2 days ago regarding there is a data center. I believe this is like 12,000. It's double-digit thousand square footage on the south end of the 11th Ward, but her questions were so brief. She asked the questions to the builder. Did you speak to the alderman? And he may have said yes or no. It was so quick. The questions were not as detailed as this new resolution will require the business owner to produce. So I am in favor of the requirements that this executive resolution, this executive order is putting together. However, I am quite concerned on the economic strain because a speaker did talk about how this economic could be an additional economic.
That is your time. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Spikerman.
Hello, Jason Spikerman, Ward 5. I'm going to be really quick. I want to kind of echo my brother in labor, Jake, in his comments. The idea behind this resolution is pretty good. I think we just need to make sure it doesn't have blocks against construction. That is something that we need in our city. Additional red tape has been hurting construction and development, economic growth. I think we really need to be careful with that. We need to monitor what we're doing. Developers are leaving the city. They're going in Kansas City. Our workers are going there because of that. Our red tape is pretty bad, so I think we need to clean that up. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final online speaker, Paris Brown.
Ms. Brown, if you could turn your camera. There you are. We can see you. Please proceed.
Hello. My name is Paris Brown. I live in Afton.
So I don't disagree that we already have these data centers. Data centers will be built. I do think that it does not need to be in the city. If we look at a lot of stuff in the city, we have not built a homeless shelter in the city in 20 years, as to my understanding. The city has not. Ameren increased their cost. I'm a mom. I'm in a lot of the local mom groups. The Ameren's last cost increase hurt people badly. It hurt families badly. It hurt small businesses badly. And another jump just isn't sustainable for consumers. We have a lot of last. We're last in early childhood. Our special school district is over $50 million in deficit. And we also have to look at not only the environmental impact of the center itself, but the long term. We will continue to see more tornadoes similar to the ones that we saw this spring as our environment becomes more unstable in this location. And how will the data centers be prepared for that? Will that take away resources when we have, like I said, North City is still missing resources from the tornado. If these data centers are hit, is that going to take resources away as we jump on top of this? And also, will our union construction guys, will they be taken care of and protected? And, will this support our union jobs? So that's my input. I really appreciate my time.
Thank you.
Bill Walker?
Mr. Walker, are you here with us? All right, next speaker, please.
Jeff Abusi?
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Abusi. I'm here representing the operating engineers, Local 513 and 148. They not only build projects, but they also operate the buildings after they're completed. I'm also to give testimony for the St. Louis Building Trades, who supports data centers in St. Louis. I think the biggest thing, and I know Jay Kummel had talked about this, about the thousands of jobs that go to construction projects of this size. That is important. I also heard about taxation of what this means to the city and how millions of dollars could come into the city's coffers to help pay for some of the things that we've heard from some of the people that have testified. To comment on the last lady that spoke, she wanted to know about, are the union people protected? Yes, this developer particularly has signed a project labor agreement with the St. Louis Building Trades, guaranteeing that every job on that job will be a union job. As Jake also mentioned before, our salaries on projects like this will exceed over $100,000. So as developers look to St. Louis to build things, what we don't want them to do is always be going to Kansas City, and we don't want the city to create barriers of entry for projects like this. So I hope everybody looks at those things in making your decisions, that we continue to incentivize people to build here, live here, work here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Peebles?
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Pepler. I live in Soulard. So I'm kind of struggling with where to start. Since when has anyone seen a data center bring benefit to a community? There's been a lot of talk about money and land use and jobs, which would be very short term, construction only, and then after that it's like 4 people making sure the lights are turned off at night. But there hasn't been a lot of talk about morality. We've seen prominent examples of data centers in Memphis where the civilian population downwind, their eyes are red and watering, and their water is brown due to the electrical production, pollution, and the excessive amounts of fresh drinking water required for cooling a data center. Data centers are at the core of population control. thought policing. They're tracking your movement, your communication, to decide if you may be thinking about thoughts which the leaders may disagree with. We've seen some of this in the news recently. There are hordes of power and fresh water. I heard the one proposed in Utah would use the current power of the entirety of Utah plus the 5 surrounding states. If you haven't researched Palantir, I suggest you do so. Palantir is the AI subversive monitoring.
That's your time, sir. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Sandra Paget.
Yeah, and if you don't get to finish your testimony today, you can always send us testimony in writing. We do want to hear what you have to say. We just have to get through a certain number of people today, so we really do appreciate everyone that's come out today.
Hi, my name is Sandra Paget, and I'm the Executive Director of Consumers Council of Missouri. One of the things we focus on is utilities, and that's affordable utilities for people in Missouri. We support this resolution because we are concerned about the effect of increase on for electricity and water on Ameren and city water bills. Data centers will increase the need for electric capacity, and this is extremely concerning. We're not necessarily against data centers, but we are against setting up a system where we create a need for electric capacity and then Ameren decides that it needs to build a nuclear power plant. Ameren already, if you listen to the chatter, Ameren is talking a lot about nuclear energy. And again, Consumers Council, we're not against nuclear energy, but Senate Bill 4, which was passed by the legislature this year and signed into law by the governor, who received a lot of money from the utilities, will allow Ameren to charge customers for the cost of building a nuclear power plant before it's completed. And that's concerning because we expect that that is going to result in a $500 additional electric bill. We're also concerned about the water consumption. So 80% of data center water is evaporated. It's not going to go back into the system. There aren't very many good studies as to how much water data centers use. And what we suggest is that the cities think about entering into a community benefits agreement with the data center if it gets to that point, whereby the data center would perhaps agree to put money into a fund that would enable the city to enable residents to install meters in their house. And that could limit the amount of use of water by city residents because then they could pay attention to efficiency. And so we're asking everybody to help us with that affordability, even the unions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Elise Schaefer.
Hello. Thanks, Chairman Browning. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Elise Schaefer, and I'm representing Missouri Coalition for the Environment. I've submitted testimony via email, so if you have further questions, I direct you there. MCE is deeply concerned about the clear and present danger that data centers pose to our environment. The energy use alone is not only going to incentivize, as we've already seen, an increase in fossil fuel production. Sandy Paget mentioned nuclear energy, but Ameren's already building more fossil fuel infrastructure with the excuse of the increased demand that data centers pose. We also are going to see electricity costs increase for average residents if data centers are allowed to go through unchecked. Bloomberg just put out a report on Monday that said electricity now costs up to 267% more for a single month than it did 5 years ago in areas located near significant data center activity. That is serious. We need to make sure that after Resolution 111, we have serious, toothsome regulations in place binding data centers so that if there is not community support, and if there is not a plan in place to bring renewable energy sufficient to power each data center, that data center is not allowed to be built. A large data center can consume up to 200 megawatts of electricity. That's equivalent to Ameren's current largest solar facility. So these companies need to be paying upfront for any infrastructure improvements that they promise to bring, up to and including the renewable energy to power their facilities. And I want you to know it's possible to execute a data center in an environmentally conscious manner. The Potawatomi tribe in Milwaukee, Wisconsin has put together a data center that doesn't use any new water except for what they use for their bathrooms. So these are reasonable regulations to put in place. It's possible, we just have to ask. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Scott Ramshaw.
Good afternoon, committee. My name's Scott Ramshaw. I'm with the Plumbers and Pipefitters out of St. Louis. I've been in the trades 46 years, started when I was 18. When you speak about Ameren, I've worked at Merrimack, Portage, Lavity, Rush Island. 2 of those facilities are closed. Ameren, we're lucky to have Ameren in this area, whether you like them or not. On the leading edge of having to build 2 new units, one at the old Rush Island site and one at the Merrimack site. They're probably going to be gas-fired units. Energy is a big thing. We're lucky that the technology is changing. Technology is not only going to help us, it's going to feed the metropolitan area and the surrounding areas. We cover 67 counties, our local alone. We have 850 apprentices in a 1 through 5 year program. The job creation for all of industry, of which this region grows on, is important. So just slow down, look at all the different things we need to look at, but let's be proactive on moving this region forward. And if there's anything I can answer, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Cecilia Dork online.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for hearing me today. A couple of things that I would love to address just on the jobs front for these data centers. While they don't employ hundreds of people on site every day, the jobs that they do produce are stable, 24/7, high-wage technical jobs, and the kinds of jobs that anchor people into future-facing industries like IT, engineering, facilities management. They also bring with them steady streams of vendors and contractor activity from electricians to fiber providers. So the economic footprint that you see is larger than the headcount in the building itself alone. Additionally, they attract employers and entrepreneurs that require low latency services because it improves their own outcomes and service capabilities. So although it's not an immediate sort of headcount, there is a significant additional impact. And then with regard to tax revenue, I think it's important to address the different sort of fiscal layers here. There's a difference between new construction and retrofit. Retrofit projects often replace existing value with new value, so the tax base on real estate increases incremental, where by contrast, new construction on vacant or underutilized land creates value from scratch. Every dollar assessed is new to the city and its taxing jurisdiction. Additionally, there's personal property tax, sales and use tax earnings, and all of that combined is more than most land uses provide to the city of St. Louis. So as folks consider all of the things that the city of St. Louis really needs to put money towards, these taxes really provide that opportunity and additional revenue that they otherwise would not have and could put to good use. And then finally, if I could just add that, you know, this is really the time to really be focusing on this investment. It takes a long time to build this infrastructure, and if St. Louis would like to sort of position itself as a tax-centric economy for all of these things that we're really excited about, then this is really important to invest in now while the opportunity still exists.
Thank you, Mr. Warwick. And can you please introduce yourself, where you're calling from?
Yeah, while I don't live in the city of St. Louis, my employer is in 63118. We've been headquartered there for a number of years, and I'm a former resident of the city of St. Louis for many years.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Tim Brees.
Thank you to the board for hearing me on this.
I'm speaking in favor of data centers. I'm a real estate developer. I am from St. Louis County. I live in Baldwin, but I have done developments in the city of St. Louis, throughout St. Louis County and Kansas City area. What I will say is that as I would like to see St. Louis to continue to be tech ready, like many cities, Chicago, Dallas, Kansas City. Many cities in the Midwest have embraced the technology. There's technology boom is happening, and this data centers are going to be built, whether they're built within the city or whether they're built in the outlying areas, they're going to be built. There's a certain thing, it was mentioned, latency and redundancy. The idea of having these data centers located within the city provides not just the jobs in the data center, but they assure attracting businesses that are tech businesses. They're driven by the evolving technology. They help hospitals. The AI integration in the hospitals is absolutely incredible, what they're doing and how they're integrating the AI diagnosis to assist doctors. All of those things are coming here in the near future. Having redundancy and latency, having the infrastructure here is critically important to St. Louis. As a developer, somebody had mentioned earlier, developers want certainty. And as a real estate developer in this area, I've done over $750 million worth of development in the area. I am looking for certainty. I think if you're going to have this resolution, it should be broken down because it is impossible for a developer to create a full set of plans to spend millions, tens of millions of dollars on a project that could be $1 billion in size in order just to find that they may be denied that. So I suggest you take the process and break it down into separate pieces.
Thank you.
Jerry Conley online.
Jesus Christ.
Mr. Connolly, if you could turn on your camera. There you are. We can see you. Please proceed.
Very good. I'll pledge to say the whole truth, nothing but the truth, because I didn't raise my hand earlier. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think 2 minutes is too short to kind of deliver a coherent testimony here. So shooting from the top, I'd encourage everyone, as was mentioned before, to watch the September 10th, I believe, Planning Commission presentation. And as the city moves forward with developing regulations, please emphasize the role of the professionals that the city has on staff. The applicant for the prospect site submitted a document to someone in the city that was shared by public radio this week. And in it, basically, they're offering to be like a partner with the city in developing these regulations. And I think that would be the worst possible thing for the city to do. Also, I think whether it's conditional use or a Board of Alderman hearing, we need to have 2 meetings each time because the amount of false information peddled by supporters of projects, some of whom have already spoken at this hearing, needs to be refuted. The public should have the opportunity, and we need an independent financial analysis from an outside body, not from the St. Louis Development Corporation. We also have the SLU 353 Redevelopment Corp. They can grant up to 25 years tax abatement in this location. And again, contrary to what some of the public information is, the St. Louis Development Corporation, according to that redevelopment agreement, has a review period when tax abatement is recommended by the SLU 353. So those meetings, SLDC needs to have those meetings out in the open rather than in someone's private conference room. I'm opposing this resolution basically because it needs to be an ordinance with a mandate for a moratorium while appropriate regulations are developed. And also the same standards that the city applies to.
That's your time. We
Thank
appreciate it. We'll accept any additional comments you have via written testimony.
Michael Berg. I'm sorry, Michael Berg.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Michael Berg, Ward 6. Appreciate the Alderwoman and the Mayor with the ordinance and the resolution. I agree that there should be a moratorium until very set criteria are put in order. I mean, we're looking at, we have the potential to have industrialized society with all renewable energy. We're moving towards that direction. And a couple things happen. You have this boom of AI, you have the boom of cryptocurrency, and we now have, let's be honest, we have lunatics in the White House and running our federal government who do not look at climate change as something important. It is an actual existential threat to our existence. We are sleepwalking to civilizational demise if we're not addressing this issue. And I keep hearing these things are going to be built, these things are going to be built. Well, they're not building them in St. Charles right now. Since we have people who are not looking to actually save civilization from existential threat, we have to agree, start somewhere, say we're not going to do this, we're not going to, it's not worth AI and cryptocurrency to have floods, droughts, and a complete changing of our climate until we no longer have the crops we need and the ability to function and our seas overflowing. So we need to look at what's going on big picture and say we have to take a stand somewhere. We can take a stand in the city and say we are not going to put projects that as a totality in our civilization are going to lead to our demise. So I commend them for putting this forward. And yes, I agree with previous speakers who said we should have a moratorium period until you have real strict size limitations. And we're looking out for these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie Buddenmeyer online.
We cannot hear you. Still can't hear you.
Okay, Ms. Buddenmeyer, we'll come back to you. Bill Bick.
Hello. I'm a proud 25-year resident of Ward 2. My wife's a proud 60-year resident of Ward 2. So, and for 40 years, I've been in the business of supplying critical infrastructure inside the walls of data centers. So I want to speak from that perspective. And first of all, I'd like to applaud the committee for taking a thoughtful approach to this. I think, this can be done in a thoughtful manner and still take advantage of the great economic opportunity. Just a couple of data points to echo what was said a minute ago. The Big Five, Microsoft a year or so ago outlawed evaporative cooling in any new data center design. So their water usage in new data center goes 90%. And the rest of the Big Five are following suit. Anybody who wants to lease space to them is following suit. So in terms of electricity, as was also mentioned earlier, there is not enough contiguous land to do a data center in St. Louis above 500 megawatts at this time. So it's important to, I think, keep that, that data point in mind too. In terms of financials, the typical data center we see around the country, I haven't seen any data centers designs in the past year, by the way, that have used evaporative cooling. Financials, I would echo this. There's 50 people employed directly by the data center user. There's also 50 people, another 50 employed to maintain the facilities, and another 50 people to maintain the equipment in the facilities. In terms of the economics of it, if a data center costs $500 million to build, the amount of equipment that's sales taxable that goes in there is at least $500 million. And there's a 3 to 5 year refresh cycle on that. That's part of just financial data point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Want to try it again? Ms. Budmeyer? Wes Stigner?
Appreciate the time from the board. I'm from Ward 8 and the time being put on. I'm from Ward 8 and I believe this does not go far enough. The city deserves a ban on data centers in favor of housing and actual centers and actual foundational needs like earlier mentioned, rebuilding and maintaining our beautiful built environment in North St. Louis, for example, and actual infrastructure like the recently canceled Green Line. I have a friend who has done a lot of work in past years on these centers and seen their impact on local communities, energy, and environment. And some of the things I've learned from folks in these fields are that once these larger developers have a foothold in communities, they extract more and more over time and work to further influence local government for those ends. As for, on the note of attracting jobs or from larger tech companies, as someone personally who worked at a large local tech company, these giants are often very short-term, and the gains that we get from them are very short-term, especially in cities like St. Louis with a bad history with TIFs that only shrinks the gains that exist. Block was earlier mentioned as in the earlier resolution, and as an example, they laid off 3,000 or more workers in the last 2 years. Plenty of those were local jobs. So when we talk about attracting those kind of tech companies, much like these centers, it's often short-term gain, like with construction. St. Charles just passed a year-long ban and gained nationwide recognition for that. This is St. Charles we're talking about. So St. Louis absolutely has the means to have a moratorium while they were able to do that. And meanwhile, Kara and leadership are too cowardly to enact even a moratorium. The mayor should be pushing for a moratorium and or a ban, not serving her developer donors, as seems to be an thing that she often does, versus serving the city. And if not, I'd like to remind her how well things went for Cruson with the Resign Light. Appreciate your time.
Shameem Budmeyer?
Is it working now?
Yes, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I'm sorry, apologies, I don't know what ward I am in, but I am in St. Louis City County. I am opposed to the data center. Again, we kind of look at this as from the job aspect, where again, this is a smaller data center, so this will most likely be only employing maybe a handful of people, of which will not be from this city or state, most likely. They will probably from external points that will not be going to here. Again, short term, this will be stealing money from the residents of St. Louis, who are going to have to front the cost of all these data centers, as we already are fronting the cost for everything else that is currently going on. The Armory was a community space and should continue to be a community space because it was already made for that. And as those people who closed out the Armory killed all those jobs for those people that were working there, we could reinstate that to be for something else. This is either going to take energy from us or poison our water. And I am opposed, and this could be going to better investments in our schools, in our government buildings, for our people, any way to reinvest it towards our people for better infrastructure, better sustainability habits, better overall environment for our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alexander Grimp?
Hi, good evening. I'm here to just talk about the benefits of data centers broadly. I am a city resident. I have been for about 20 years. I'm in Ward 7, I believe. That's Fox.
Speak into the mic, sir.
Oh, I apologize. Is that better?
It's not great for tall people.
Little taller than it. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm an attorney. I work with small businesses primarily and startups. I came down here today because I think this is an important issue. Data centers represent critical 21st century infrastructure. It's necessary to support the research universities that we have in this city that are world-class, the hospitals, tons of small businesses, tons of large businesses in the city, and frankly, everybody in this room relies on them every day. If you've got a cell phone, if you use any kind of mobile service, any kind of technology for entertainment, business, anything like that, that data is processed and moves through a data center. There are tangible benefits to having that data processed closer to you. It reduces latency, it increases reliability, it increases speeds. If you've ever been scrolling through your entire album of photos because you don't know what else to do and suddenly they start taking a long time to load, that's because they're trying to access them from halfway across the country instead of your local one. This proximity to local, the proximity, it provides massive benefits to local businesses and startups, and supporting the development of additional data centers within the city would support everybody within the city and the local businesses and local economy and commerce. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron Stonehenge online.
Hi, thank you. Progress is not just about a better economy and making more money. It might be true that data centers are going to be a part of our future, whether we want them or not. And so I would urge this committee to, if this data center does get approved and built, that it goes through as rigorous a sustainability process as possible before it can achieve that status of becoming itself. To speak to some of the water usage that's being used, an article from University of Tulsa estimated that some data centers use up to 5 million gallons of drinking water a day. So per year, that's 1.8 billion gallons of water. And over 10 years, that's 18 billion drinking gallons of water for one data center. And so I think we need to think about in terms of what is this kind of infrastructure doing for our water? How much is it taking away from people? And our data center is going to be able to, in some way, to reduce that amount of water that they do use. And if they aren't committed to doing that, then maybe they aren't the best partner for us in St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emma Engel.
Hi, I'm Emma. I live in Ward 5. I personally do not use AI. I try to avoid it. It does not benefit me at all. None of my friends use it. And so this data center would not benefit all of us, but it will harm all of us. I understand that they need to be built, but they don't need to be in this city, especially large ones. And they're a gigantic waste of resources. They put a strain on our energy grid. And we've already had our power bills go up 12% recently, and they will just continue to go up higher, and it is unaffordable, and it will make this city a hell to live in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Annie Rice online.
Hi. Apologies, I was not here earlier, but I swear to tell the truth and the whole truth. Annie Rice, I live in the 4th Ward and testifying on my own here today. One of the things that I have not heard come up in discussion is the sales and use tax exemption that the Missouri legislature passed for data centers in 2017. And I apologize, I don't have a direct source to the underlying code, but it would be important to look up. There's a recent article from Kansas City KSHB about sales tax exemption for data centers. And so while construction should benefit the people of St. Louis as it goes forward, if a sales and use tax exemption are in place, then there is no tax benefit that is being made, especially if there is layered tax incentive on top of that. So I would encourage for whatever project is coming forward that we take a really hard look at what underlying state exemptions are in place for tax revenue as well, especially if there is the passed through cost from Ameren on any increased electricity usage, pass-through costs from our water department. And I do think that it would be I realize that these are sort of two different subjects, both a builder or a contractor and a utility, but I think it would be well within the Board of Aldermen's purview to ask some really hard questions of Ameren and get some prices and say, what is this? What is an increased drain on our electricity look like for the consumers in our area? Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Violet Pettinelli.
Hi, my name's Violet. I'm from Ward 6, and I've actually lived in that ward majority of my life. I don't want to be redundant, but as most of us already know, St. Louis is in the top 3, if not #1 for highest crime rate. And upon comparing the map of this with the map of vacant and abandoned buildings, there's an astounding amount of overlap. This isn't all too surprising because at the same time, St. Louis is actually #3 for highest ratio of vacant houses to unhoused people, and this is as of November 2024, with about 99 homes per every homeless person. So I worry that with the presence of a data center, that will only increase, and we will beat out Syracuse, New York, and or Detroit, Michigan. And on a personal level, my utility bills have doubled just about every month these past months. And I've been an independent since I turned 18, and this is becoming beyond my realm of affordability. So with that, I would hate to see what the data center could do to contribute that. And again, a lot of people have talked about just allocation of resources. And when I'm listening to the possible pros, those are all very hypothetical, while the cons are very real and physical and affecting a lot of people in the city. And so to see that just exponentially grow with the presence of a data center is terrifying. Thanks.
Rasheen online.
Hello, my name is Rasheen Caballas. I'm from Ward 3. I am opposing the data center, and I do echo a lot of the cons topics. But what I wanted to bring up here is that my concern is if it does get built, what are the checks and balances and accountability for these data center companies? Is the city going to require certifications like LEED certification or ISO certification in the event that their customers don't require any certification? And is the city set up appropriately to audit them and ensure that like any corrective actions or whatnot are monitored and prioritized? Thank you.
Thank you.
Malik Lindo.
Give me 1 second as I load up everything. Okay. So first, I'm not going to say whether I support the bill, but I will say I'm very skeptical of data centers given what we've heard come out of other cities. But I really want to highlight something that I think is important to many of you. You may be familiar with the fact that the data center that was recently proposed is near the Grand Metrolink station. And the Grand Metrolink station is where the 70 Grand it runs. So that's one of the most popular routes in the state of Missouri, as well as the Metrolink right there. So I feel because this is one of the most important routes, and the fact that a data center there would not likely contribute to as many jobs as was stated earlier, I think it's important that we look at other uses for this property, especially because the strategic land use plan specifically outlines that this area should be used for what's considered the central areas west, which requires that developments in this area align with the historic character of the surrounding region and also contribute to walkability, bikeability, and transit usage. Furthermore, it highlights the importance of mixed-use developments and housing in this area. So it would be a missed opportunity to develop a data center here. And I heard that many people mentioned how we can't just get rid of any opportunity to develop property or to build new jobs, but we can build new jobs. We can build housing, and that creates jobs and housing for people. So I rebuke that idea, and I would be remiss to say, like, why is it that people from Baldwin or anywhere in West County talking about they need to build a data center in our city instead of, we know they wouldn't accept that in their own city. So I rebuke that. And in relation to cost concerns, well, I'll email the rest to you. I'm in 7th Ward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maxine Glamour.
Wow, I can't believe I have to go after you, Malik. Hello, my name is Maxie Glamour. I'm the committee person for the 3rd Ward. I'm the president and co-founder of Trans Housing Initiative St. Louis, and today I'm coming on behalf of the Sierra Club. Right now, we're currently working on a project looking at energy burden for residents in the city of St. Louis, and we have recognized that the exponential amount of burden is placed on Black and brown individuals in the city of St. Louis with the rising bills. Some people have bills that were $80 that are now $1,000. Yesterday, I talked to a man who said that he turned off his electricity because he could no longer afford the bill. He is charging his phone and is sleeping in his car every single night. And so when we're looking at data centers, we can see that there is an increase in how much people's bills are increasing. They cannot afford their bills, they cannot afford food, and they cannot afford to eat. We want to ensure that St. Louisans can stay in their house, that they can stay with their lights on, and they can stay living to the fullest of their potential. Data centers interrupt the potentiality of St. Louisans to live to the fullest. And we are hearing a whole bunch of people who think that trickle-down economic investment rise all boats, but we know that the boats are going to Creve Coeur Lake. We know that the boats are not staying in our docks, and we want financial investments that look at renewable energy, 100% regenerative water sources, and ensuring that we are mitigating the noise pollution that is disrupting the migratory patterns of birds, bees, and everything else. I love our city, and I think AI data centers can be subjected to regulations under a 1-year moratorium, ensuring that we get this right and not just build things because we have Proud Boys wanting to invade South St. Louis.
Adrian Cosby.
Hi, I'm in Ward 7, Adrian Cosby. I'd like to point out that the vast majority of folks here today who are in favor of data centers are middle-aged men in business suits. Not to assume, but it doesn't seem like any of these guys are having a hard time paying their electric bills. I'm in favor of a strict moratorium like St. Charles has implemented. As we've already heard, data centers leach water and power, create air, water, light, and sound pollution, do not create jobs, raise costs of power, and take up space that could be used and should be used for community development, not unreliable technology, AI. Not to mention, if it's an AI data center, AI itself steals jobs. AI is also used for surveillance and control, something that we could all use a lot less of. The only positive I've heard anyone mention today is faster internet, but I don't need faster internet. It's fast enough for me already. We need to allocate our resources to so many other things, first and foremost to the people of North City who are still recovering from the tornado in May, also to better public transport, housing for our homeless populations, green spaces, and more. Who cares if we're competing with Kansas City if we can't even take care of our own people? Downtown St. Louis is already dying. Placing buildings with no people living and working in them will certainly not bring life back to our city. When we look around the country and see water and air being sucked up and poisoned by data centers, the answer should be obvious. St. Louis would be better off without more of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Danny Kahn.
Thank you, Alders, for holding this meeting. I'm Danny Kahn. I live in Tom Oldenburg's ward, and I am staunchly against data centers in order to protect the Mississippi River. I understand the need for development, but I do not understand why this is always focused on big-ticket projects despite the cost to our community and environment. It smells of short-term profit-seeking. It smells of big tech companies trying to encroach on our city. It smells of gentrification. Data centers are an attempt to abuse our rivers and other natural resources and raise utility costs to get a political win as being open for business. But the benefit of data centers are very minimal, and at what cost do we abuse our rivers? Unfortunately, I find regulations on data centers to not be enough because the irreparable harm they cause to the watershed and migratory patterns of the local ecology. We need a moratorium on data center projects in St. Louis and the surrounding areas due to the importance of our location at the confluence of the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers. This is the aorta of our continent, not a place for Silicon Valley to leech off of. I argue a temporary moratorium is just the first step to protecting St. Louis's long-term interests of clean water, healthy ecology, and affordable utilities. A coalition is forming around this issue, and together we have garnered over 10,000 signatures supporting a moratorium on data centers. Just in the last week. I encourage the Board of Aldermen to strategize around sustainable development instead by supporting everyday St. Louisans from the ground up, especially those living on the north side who are still in need of attention to recover from the May tornado and uplift those communities who have been systematically underdeveloped over the course of St. Louis's history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily Andrews.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I live in the 2nd Ward, and I'm here to represent the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council. Our offices are in Ward 5. We recently hosted a program with several other building stakeholder organizations on data centers, and my main takeaway from that was that, from our speakers who are experts in the field, that data centers are an industry. And they need to be regulated like an industry. And so I applaud the city for your deliberate approach in managing data center development here. In Resolution 111, you ask potential data centers to disclose anticipated energy and water use. I would recommend taking this a step further and requiring those data centers, existing and future, to then report their energy and water use annually to the city. This will then prove that what they've projected is true, and there is already a mechanism in place to do this through the benchmarking program managed by the Building Division's Office of Building Performance. Since data centers really use a significant amount of energy, I would also recommend they be required or strongly encouraged to provide on-site power through renewable energy, such as solar or ground source. In addition, there really are some innovative opportunities out there that data centers could consider, like heat recovery. There are existing and planned data centers that couple heat recovery with district heating systems to heat apartment complexes. A Microsoft data center in Finland is underway with a heat recovery system that is anticipated to power 100,000 homes, which will lead to the closure of a nearby coal-powered heating plant. Thanks for the opportunity to address your committee, and thanks for being proactive.
Thank you.
Corey McAllen.
I'm guessing that's me. It's Carrie McCullen. I live in St. Louis City in Ward 2, and I value community, the environment, and clean air and water. I, along with 10,408 others, oppose AI data centers in St. Louis. We want a 1-year complete moratorium on data centers here. What will data centers do for St. Louis besides provide temporary jobs, and extract wealth and resources from our communities who need it the most. St. Louis residents feel sold out, and we need leaders who will side with us and not big business. St. Louis has a long history of environmental racism, redlining, and blight, specifically in North and West St. Louis. Tax abatements in particular disproportionately affects Black and Brown students. While our North and West Side neighbors are still recovering from May's tornado, we want to develop the Armory as a data center. Will these residents see the trickle down of a $1.5 billion Armory data center? To quote Tennessee's Lookout publication, Elon Musk's Grok data center in Memphis provides a textbook example of how the people who contribute the least to environmental harm often suffer the most from it. The facility's behemoth methane gas turbines increase Memphis's smog by 30 to 60% as they belch planet-warming nitrogen oxides and poisonous formaldehyde around the clock, pollutants linked to respiratory and cardiovascular disease. Clean air is both a constitutional right, according to the 9th Amendment, and a human right as per the United Nations. We need a year-long moratorium on all data centers in St. Louis. We have more questions than we have answers, and we need more time to understand what we are up against. Please fight for us and our future. Thank you.
Lauren Fila.
Hi, I'm Lauren Filla. I'm in Maplewood. I am the co-chair of the Eco-Socialist Green Party of Eastern Missouri. I'm in opposition to this resolution because it doesn't do enough to protect residents from potentially irreversible harm. I'd like to bring the committee's attention to the petition that was signed by over 10,400 local residents, and that was in 9 days. And that petition calls for a year-long moratorium to fully assess the impact of data centers. Your constituents are saying that they want a pause, a real pause, to fully investigate how our water supply could handle this, what our power supply could handle, how much our electric bills would go up, what could be done with this space instead that benefits the community, and how many of these 353 redevelopment corps exist that reportedly have the authority to build data centers without resident approval. We're nowhere close to knowing the answers to these questions. In cities where massive data centers have been built, residents experience rolling blackouts and brownouts, loss of power, loss of water, because as was testified, these facilities use an incredible amount of drinking water. They use excessive light and sound pollution. They're big, buzzing dead zones that bring no vibrancy to the community, and huge increases in electric bills. These are the intrinsic features of massive data centers. They have no place in cities. They have no place in St. Louis. And I want to just point out, we don't have to approve something just because a developer asks for it. So often in St. Louis, what's called development is extraction. Massive data centers would extract our water. They would extract our power. They would leave us with pollution and high power bills. I'm not interested in decreasing tech latency when we have residents that can't afford their power bills, and we have enough pollution here already. Thanks.
Thank you.
Daniel Garcia.
Hi, I just live in South County, but this issue is so important to me that I decided to speak today. I won't reiterate what everyone's already said already, but I would also support a moratorium on data centers for at least a year to really understand what the impact is. We need to know local state studies about hyperscale data centers, what they do to communities and the effect on the environment we've talked about, water, and the real economic benefit. I was reading and I saw in NPR that, so if the Armory, for example, holds a 15-year tax abatement, would we really be seeing those returns in the tax sector? It's just also gray area that I feel we need this time. And if you look at other communities in Northern Virginia, and also we talked about Memphis already, these communities needed more time. They didn't need fast results. They didn't need more development. So I just don't think also a black hole in the middle of the Midtown, like revitalization idea, is going to bring anything to St. Louis. And as someone looking to move to the city, I don't know. I don't know if I want to live in St. Louis that has a huge data center in the middle of town. And I think that our city deserves the same outcry that's like St. Charles did over earlier in the year. So I'd like to see a moratorium on data centers in St. Louis.
Thank you.
Maisha Johnson.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I heard a lot of how it affects the utilities, how it would take jobs. What I'm not hearing is how it's going to cause harm to many individuals' health in the surrounding area and within so many miles of it. It's already an issue because healthcare is something that is hard to come by for many constituents here in St. Louis, and being able to take care of ourselves, having to take care of ourselves on about something that we are not causing on our, I feel that it is causing more harm than what we're already experiencing. Community input wasn't asked for this space. It was once supposed to be a residential space, and we're back to the data center. Like, do we really need that? You just named that many data centers that's in this space that we can utilize and benefit from. So I heard in the room many times. But think about the children, think about the people that don't have insurance, think about the ones that's already sick, and that it would cause more harm to them. Thank you.
Clinton McBride.
Good evening. Clinton McBride, Government Affairs Director for Labor's Local 10 and also a resident of the First Ward. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening. I'll try to be brief because I know this has been long. I've heard a lot about the water issue, and I do know that that is clearly an issue that we need to pay a lot of attention to, and I believe a gentleman started to address this earlier, but there have been significant technological upgrades that have happened in the data center industry. They've been pumping a lot of money into the research and scientific reasoning and methodology so that they can reduce their water consumption. One of the main things is that instead of it being evaporative cooling, it is now more like a car radiator where that water just keeps recycling back and through and over again. They'll occasionally flush that out and refill it, but having massive water bills are not in their best interest either, so they've put a lot of that money into the research to try to quell that issue. Also, I think something that we haven't mentioned a lot about, I heard a lot about taxes, but as far as data centers are concerned, they pay personal property tax on every single data server that is in that building. And that is a massive amount of income. And frankly, the city of St. Louis desperately needs revenue. And we're going to have to get creative in figuring out where we're going to find that. I don't think anybody is just gung-ho about having data centers, but at the same time, we have to be realistic and realize that, the city's bleeding out, we're losing population, our revenue is declining, and we've got to find a way to be able to supplement that. I know that the failed project in St. Charles County, for example, they said in 1 hour would have created as much revenue for the city as the casino does in an entire week. So I think that we really need to look at this in a thoughtful way. And I do think, as President Hummel said earlier, doing this in a very smart way and thoughtful way that puts the city first, but that moves the city forward is in our best interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patricia Brown. Patrick.
That's cool. It's all right.
Patricia, please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee for the time. My name is Patrick Brown. I am the Director of Community Relations for Ameren, Missouri. Lifelong city resident, former City Hall staffer, homeowner, and resident of the 9th Ward. And as it turns out, I may be a middle-aged man in a business suit. Ameren's focus is providing affordable and reliable internet for all of our Missouri customers, existing customers as well as businesses that move into our service territory. I certainly appreciate all of the comments this evening and sentiments. And so I just want to share a few facts about the ways that we at Ameren are engaging with these large load customers. So to start, as a regulated utility in Missouri, we are required to business customers that move into our service footprint, as we are all customers. We are well positioned from an energy infrastructure standpoint to serve the growth of electric usage in St. Louis and across the state. And, you know, to be clear, it is in Ameren's interest to ensure that large electric customers pay their fair share of associated costs to serve their projects. In fact, it is a new Missouri law, Senate Bill 4, that, and quote, prevents other customer classes and rates reflecting any unjust or unreasonable costs arising from service to large electric customers. I have a special appreciation for the balance that this committee, the mayor of the city, is trying to strike here. And in Ameren, Missouri, we really do view ourselves as partners to you in this work and want to support your community development work and your economic development work. Be happy to answer any additional questions around other protections that we have in place once we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Raish.
My name is Daniel Rosh. I work in the data center industry. So I handle several gigawatts of different projects across the country, including hyperscalers, including some of the large tech companies. So I have some expert knowledge on the topic that I wanted to share. I'm not here on a professional level. I'm here on a personal level. And I want to say that I'm not here to advocate for data centers. I'm here to say that if the city is to build a data center, the permits are what determine how much resources are used. So whether it's water, electricity from the grid, or air pollution, all of those are directly used to the maximum of the permit, and I can help as a free consultant to write permits that can minimize these resources. So for example, of the several projects that I work on, there are technologies available, and they're quite popular at this point, for zero water usage for a data center. It's also possible to have a data center built that uses zero electricity from the grid, generating power on site. And the third resource being air pollution, there's also technologies available that use zero smog form pollution for this power generation. A lot of people aren't aware of this. It is some very new technology that's just now being deployed this year. But I want to offer my services to this city. If you have any questions about routing these permits, they have a huge impact on how much resources are used by the data center builders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicholas Ogilvie Thomas.
Thank you to the board for giving me the opportunity to speak on this issue. My name is Nicholas Ogilvie Thompson. I live in the county, not the city, but I hope you don't discount my testimony because I, along with everyone in the county and other nearby areas, will also bear the cost of this project. Data centers use an astronomical amount of electricity and water. It's an unavoidable fact. It means that wherever they have proliferated, their presence is associated with a significant rise in the cost of electricity and water, as supply of those resources cannot keep up with the increase in demand brought about by the data center arrival. And to what end? For those who say AI is the future, it is not. It is a massive bubble according to all serious economic analysis. For example, a recent MIT study found that 95% of AI enterprises are not at all profitable and have no path to profitability. There's no business case that justifies the extraordinary capital expenditures in AI and the cost to the communities where these data centers are built. And so the money to build this data center can be put to much more beneficial uses in St. Louis. On a separate note, I've heard a lot of the pro-data center side say we need to be realistic, so I think it's important to recognize the wider ecological reality we live in. It's October 1st and it feels like summer outside. This year, the world passed 1.65 degrees Celsius of warming above pre-industrial levels, and the pace of warming is only accelerating. We are currently predicted to reach 3 degrees of warming by 2050. What does that mean? In short, total ecological collapse resulting in mass death. 50% of all species on Earth will go extinct. The International Federation of Actuaries, the people whose job it is to predict the future, recently published a report predicting that 4 billion people will die by 2080 if global warming continues apace. That's half the world's population. Considering these facts and the need to massively reduce emissions to forestall this catastrophic future, it is unconscionable to approve any new massive sources of emissions, especially for as wasteful a purpose as AI. Thank you.
Eli Front.
Hello, I'm Eli Front, resident Ward 8. I'd just like to start to say that I believe that we can be a city that can be a growing city instead of a shrinking one. We can be one of the greatest cities in the US, and I would like us to be one of them, but if we look at some of the greatest cities, the best across the US, one thing they all have in common is they all have plenty and plenty of data centers. These cities have the best organizations, they have the best support for the community that's struggling, they have the best services, but our city cannot support these things because of our lack of businesses moving out and leaving. We need innovation here, and unfortunately with this NIMBY mentality, we're losing our potential to grow and become great. A little history on some other times that happened in St. Louis. In the 1800s, steamboat lobby was against building railroads. We lost the railroad to Chicago, and a little small town became Chicago. In the 30s and 40s, the arch was delayed by decades, which is now one of the biggest draws to our city, and it completely slowed down and derailed the riverfront redevelopment. And again, we've had so much public backlash in this room for new stadium development, and on again. The sports stadiums are the biggest drive of economic growth of people coming to the city from the county. I really empathize with all the people who are concerned with the electricity costs and all these things, but St. Louis is well below average in terms of utilities cost. I personally would be well okay paying extra money if I walked around my neighborhood and it wasn't completely empty. And I really hope that the city is able to look long-term and see the potential of our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Topers Sudlick.
Hi, I'm Topher with the PSL. We organize around the city, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I live in the county, but we organize in Fountain Park and across the city. So what everybody here has said tonight on this side of the room is right. These data centers are not going to do us any good. We've already seen what happens in Memphis. And not just this data center, but all of the large capital-intensive projects that we see never filter down to workers. What happens when these rich people build these giant projects? They make a bunch of money, and then they spend it buying up apartment complexes, investing in mergers and acquisitions, further destroying jobs, pushing outsourcing, and making our society a much worse place. If we want to get jobs, we should be investing in building housing and building schools and building hospitals, all those things that we shut down, like Homer G. Phillips all those years ago. We can do things that aren't just making rich people richer. There is no benefit to building this, and we have already seen the dire consequences in cities like Memphis. North City is already an asthma hotspot. Are we really going to make it worse so that a bunch of people in Central West End and Ladue can get even richer? I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's reasonable, and I think we should be taking a different path for the people of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Foss.
Hello, Sean Faust, First Ward. Most of you all know me up here. You also probably know that I'm an SLPS parent, and I wanted to say that there are a right way and a wrong way to do these data centers. There's one in Memphis that was mentioned several times called Colossus, I believe, and it is not doing very well for that community. There are also right ways to do this, and I'm really happy that we're pursuing an avenue that goes about it in the right way. I heard a lot of misinformation tonight about data centers. There are ways of doing this right. There's closed loop systems which use a lot less water. I go into depth way more about that and the actual science behind it, and I'd be happy to do so, or even get some more electricians in here and know a lot more about it. These things do bring a lot of jobs over a long term. In Omaha, Nebraska, we have they can't get enough electricians. So there's a lot of job growth here. And as a parent of SLPS, there's a meeting going on about closing schools. This could really build tax revenue for SLPS and the city. So I don't want to push away data centers. Hopefully another brother of mine will be speaking more about SB4 and some of the things in there and how that ties in to these data centers. But I did want to say, Annie Rice mentioned a state tax program tonight. I have filed a sunshine request. This data center has at this time not filed for that request that Annie was speaking of. So I wanted to throw that out there as well. But I would like to ask that the committee here hopefully table this later on, because there are things in the resolution I think we could improve upon and modify. So I hope we can do that. Thank you guys so much. Hope to talk to you later.
Thank you.
Tim agreed.
Thank you. Hopefully I'm the last, because you all look like you've heard plenty. My name is Tim Green. I am the executive vice president of an association called the St. Louis Electrical Connection. It is a labor management co-op between IBEW Local 1 and the St. Louis chapter NECA contractors. We have over 3,000 electricians on the eastern half of Missouri out of Local 1 and over 150 electrical and communication contractors. Our facility is in the city of St. Louis, and we have reinvested in the city of St. Louis. Our apprenticeship training center, which has over 600 students both day and night, is located at Hampton and Elizabeth. Our union hall that is always there for the city of St. Louis in their times of need is there, as well as our health and welfare facility that employs over 60 people. We are not in, plus we have over 30 electrical contractors that work in the city of St. Louis, plus we have members. As somebody who understands a little bit about public service, I understand the need for guidelines and guardrails. All we're asking is that with these guidelines and guardrails, that we don't push an industry away. Data centers employ a lot of people. From 2014 to 2020, of our 3,000 members, 1,000 of them were unemployed. They went to Iowa and they went to Nebraska to work on these data centers. Probably 80 of them stayed there and are still working. But during that time, Missouri missed the boat on data centers. I just ask, when you establish these guidelines, we're like Kansas City and we don't miss that boat of these data centers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was our last speaker.
Thank you all to who came out today to testify. We really appreciate hearing from you. This has been a long hearing, but a good one in many ways. We've gotten a lot of information today. With that, Alderwoman Schweitzer, you are recognized to close. Well, actually,
Thank you, Chairman.
I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We have committee questions.
Yeah.
Not to belabor this, but we do need to give the committee a chance to ask questions if they have them. So with that, I'll start with Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you very much. Thank everybody that came out and has questions, has statements. I congratulate the people that collected 10,000 signatures. That was very powerful for those 9 days. So I applaud you. I need to get you working with me so I can get some stuff done. The questions that I have is to the sponsor. One, I wanted to make a statement. As a city, we were created in 1764. And I keep hearing people say, you know, we need to get advanced. But I guess my question is, it seems like when you want to get advanced, you want to get advanced after the fact. We have over 12 data centers already. And so the question I'm asking is, why is there such an urgency for an executive order for future data centers? That's not making sense to me. Maybe I'm missing something. We didn't let the cow out, we didn't close the gate, and now we're saying, oh, okay, we're gonna monitor how many cows get in here. So I'm hearing all this information that you all are telling us that we need to do to ensure that data centers are on point, but we didn't do any of this with the 12. So how are we justifying this?
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great question. Industry is so often ahead of government. That has happened for the entire history of capitalism, our country, the world. Industry moves faster than government does. We have seen negative effects of waiting too long to regulate industries. I think even something as recent and as simple as short-term rentals in our city in the city. Other cities have had regulations in place for years and years, whereas we still have regulations sitting in a temporary restraining order. And I don't know about your ward, Alderman, but in mine, the lack of regulations in the city of St. Louis certainly hurts the people in my community. So it is not a situation in which, because data centers exist, therefore we should not regulate them. It is because we know they exist, because we know there aren't regulations around them, because we know there are all of these considerations, and considerations from a lot of different folks, all different sides of the issue, that encourages us to move thoughtfully with deliberation to have regulations going forward, things that would affect what data centers have to report now and going forward, what energy use there has to be, information about how close they are to residents, how much effect they have of our residents, as I said, energy use, the bills that may increase. All of these things are things that we shouldn't continue to push off. I think St. Louis too often pushes off our responsibility to regulate, and that causes harm to our community. And so I think that's why it's important to be thoughtful and to move this issue forward.
So I guess my question to you is, how many data centers do you have in your area, in your ward?
I don't believe I have any data centers in my ward.
Are they looking to bring one in your ward?
I think that there are data centers that are interested in business in my ward, yes.
Okay, and so what made you think this would be effective now?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission discussed at the beginning of the year some of the priorities. One of those priorities is clear and comprehensive regulations around data centers. And so as projects become more viable, as things come in front of the city of St. Louis, it is time to be more intentional about putting those regulations together. So Executive Order 92 talks about a 5-month timeline for these regulations, and in the meantime, leaning into the regulatory process that already exists, that some data centers, if they were in areas where, as warehouses, they would have had to gone through a conditional use process, instead of just having them regulated as warehouses, which isn't an appropriate designation at all for what they do, what they are. But instead of having them designated as warehouses, having them defined as data centers from, the executive order, which was already signed going forward, and the various questions that they would have to be able to answer, which, I took notes on every single person's comment, are a lot of the things that people were interested in, whether that is a tax incentive or, benefit to the city, or whether that's about their energy or water use.
Well, and then my other question, before all this happened, executive order, resolution, did anybody sit down with the water department and talk to them?
The water department is very involved in these conversations. They have been talking about the effect of, one, data centers are changing rapidly. A data center that might have been built 5 years ago, or, the one on, the ones that exist in the city now may have different functions than the ones that we're talking about with, that are in existence for AI or specific customers. And they are aware that there's a lot of water use that is there, and they're interested in the water use, whether their infrastructure can handle the increased water use of a data center. Again, it's one of the things that's both discussed in the conditional use process from now going forward, as well as something mentioned as part of a need for the regulatory framework that the Water Division is putting together from their perspective and from what they expect in terms of use and infrastructure needs from their perspective as well. And that's all part of the executive order and resolution.
Okay, I'm not gonna hold it up longer. My husband's gonna kill me. I owe him dinner now.
I hear ya.
And so I guess my frustration and my hesitancy is, again, the cowl is out and the gate is closed. And so we put information out that wasn't accurate. And if you're telling me these data centers were put in 5 years ago, so as we know the way technology works, as they grow and they build more, they get better. And so I'm looking at it's gonna get better and better as it go, because as this young group said, how it's impacting electric and water. And so I think each time they do it, they're trying to improve it. But I keep hearing people talk about North St. Louis. I am North St. Louis. And my ward is the ward that doesn't get the development, doesn't get the benefits. And so my residents are suffering all the way around. So I can't support this, because I think we need to slow down and we need to look at what we're asking and what we're trying to do, because I just feel that the data centers are going to get better, and regardless to what we think, technology is taking us over. And I'm not saying it's right, but it's for real. So thank you very much for answering.
I do appreciate that, and I think that the 5-month timeline that's outlined in the executive order and the resolution for those clear, thoughtful, comprehensive regulations are really important to some of the things you bring up. I appreciate the people who have commented about the need for regulation to guide how data centers operate in our city. We can have requirements in the city of St. Louis for energy use, for water use, for building energy performance standards, for job creation, for tax creation. The list goes on and on. We can ask for that. That's what regulations are. They're saying, if you want to do business here, this is what you have to do. That is our job. That is part of what we do. And so when we think about having data centers, it is up to us to put in place standards for where they can go, what kind of energy burden they can put on us, whether they have to build their own energy infrastructure or whether they can plug into an already existing grid. All of those things are things that we can deliberate. And that is what this resolution and the executive order allows us to move towards, is that deliberation. It supports that type of deliberation. And, frankly, I think it's our job.
Alderwoman ClarkHubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Alderwoman Weiser, for the work you put into this, for the thoughtfulness and the intentional time that you put into this, the passion. I love the way you take on not just issues. Now we know it's bigger than water for you, right? You love all things. So we've been here, and we could go on and on about some of the things going back and forth. There was a lot of, I'm sorry, I have to agree with Mr. Conley on this, a lot of false information that we share here today, and not feelings, not how people feel about data centers, not how people that work in them feel about data centers, but I mean factual false information that was shared for here. And that's scary, because these meetings are not only recorded and aired live, but then shared, and people can take out sound bites and use them some in very misleading and misguiding ways. So I think that this is an ongoing conversation, but an understanding of what a resolution does and does not do, for that matter. I am in support of this work and continuing these conversations, having people that understand, like Maxie and community, about what this means, and in the environment, to having this young man, the consultant, who told us about there's new ways to do this. thoughtful ways to do this that doesn't use water and electric. And if we hadn't had this space, we wouldn't know about that, right? We would just be going by what we all have heard in different, again, unfortunately, just sound bites. I think having experts, community consultants move us forward, and not just this 5 months, but in perpetuity, as it's been mentioned, how this is going to change is what's going to be important. And then one of the biggest things that we all do down here, I think, and it was uplifted, was the reporting that the young lady uplifted from the coalition. I'm sorry, I'm missing her, but that's big because that's how we hold accountable, right? And so I think that us here being committed to not just today on it, but working on it, working through the permitting, working through the different ways that we can minimize the resource, making sure we understand what resources these take and don't take from community, because again, there was some misleading comments made about this will take from that, and it doesn't. This will build that, and it doesn't, or will not, and it does. And so we just need to make sure that within the pause that we're taking here, that we inform and educate and empower our people the right way on what this means and how we can move forward as a community, as in a city, so it would be best and better rather, because we know it is already happening, and best practices moving forward. So again, thank you, and I'm open to continuing conversations with anyone as we move forward and work together in responsible development down here for the greater good in our city.
I really appreciate those comments, Alderwoman. I think you're spot on. The executive order put in place the conditions that are now in front of the things that have to be answered in front of the conditional use hearings before the Board of Public Service is making any decisions. It makes it so that anyone who has any comments about any data center going forward, at least until regulations are in place, but I do want to note that we put in here that the community needs to be at the table in future regulations, but that these are questions that will be answered. Thank you. Apparently I have to hydrate. And so this is a really important part, because this is what we need to know about these. We know the actual information from each project that comes in front of us, and people need to have an opportunity to see that as well, and then the city should make decisions from there. But this is not certainly enough. Those regulations need to be developed, and thoughtfully so. A lot of these things, again, that people spoke about in their comments are the things that need to be are laid out in the resolution and the executive order as what needs to be considered in the regulation. So I think there's a lot more agreement in terms of what the important things are than may have come across today. Thank you.
Alderman Devoti.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, first I'd like to thank you for your important work on this particular subject and your willingness to consider your position over the last 3 to 4 weeks. I might be alone in this, but with respect to the issue of data center, this is a subject that I've had to do a fair amount of education of myself over the last month. I admit I got caught flat-footed. Maybe it's my newness in this particular body. So anyway, thank you for your work on this and your education along the way. One of the benefits of following two experienced alders like Alderwoman Boyd and Alderwoman ClarkHubbard is we get to the point where there's not much more to say. I understand Alder Boyd's comments. I think they are very well taken about where we have been as a city, and where we are today, and how we need to think about how we go forward. So I appreciate those comments. I also echo Alderwoman ClarkHubbard's comments with respect to information and the importance of when we are here in a hearing or a proceeding like this to make sure that we are accurately conveying information and ideas so that as the public and others look and listen to us in the future, that they're getting a a fair idea of what we're really here to discuss. Of course, we are here to discuss Resolution 111. And my concern with the education that I've done, as I've tried to catch myself up here, is how we present ourselves as the city of St. Louis with respect to development. I understand, I recognize and realize the need that there must be that is a balancing act, that no one or no industry should run roughshod over the city of St. Louis. On the other hand, we are in competition. That's the reality. There's been a lot of talk about competition on the other side of the state. I admit it, I tend to be a parochial guy. Frankly, I see competition across the border in St. Louis County, and I also see it in St. Charles County, in Jefferson County, and across the river. So I understand the need for this particular resolution and the mayor's proclamation. I think it is, again, and I'm repeating myself, extremely important that the message coming from this body is we are willing to listen. I wish Miriam Keller was still here. I know Miriam is working very heavily with the Planning Commission. I think the work that is going to be done over the next 4 months, if my calendar is right in my head, is extremely important to convey that. To convey that we are open, that we are willing to listen, that these data centers provide valuable resources to this community and set us up for future development. I have come to the belief over the last month that these things are essentially infrastructure, that they are infrastructure that is crucial to our success as a municipality, as the city of St. Louis. So that's a long way of saying I am cautiously supporting Resolution 111, but am continuing to learn, I'm continuing to follow this. And I think it is very important, the work that the Planning Commission does over the next handful of months. Again, thank you for your work.
Thank you for those comments, and I appreciate them a lot. I know we have a lot of different thoughts on this board, in this room, in this city about data centers, but I think that we agree that it is our job as a city of St. Louis to regulate industry, to regulate what comes in front of us, and that is what this suggests as a path forward and an expeditious one. So thank you for those comments.
Alderwoman Cox-Antwi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Alderwoman, echoing my colleagues for all the work that you've done all this and also elevating the issue for something that is very clearly important to many individuals in our city. I appreciate the time that you spent truly over the past few weeks, I'll say, working on this. I do have a couple of questions, and I have pages of notes that I took from all of the constituent comments, but I think I'll share Alderman Devoti's statement that many of my senior colleagues said a lot of what I have to say. I do have a couple of questions that I know you may not have the answers to, but in your work with the plan, I would just like to get more feedback on, and I understand they're not in the room with us. The first is, has any inventory been done on the swath of existing data centers that we have here? They noted that there are 4 different types of data, but do we know between our inventory what types we currently have existing and the volume of those? I think it would be very important to the Alderwoman's point to note that we do already have active and quite fruitful data centers here in our city already, and so I would like to know what those look like.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need more information about that. You saw in the presentation some of the different ways the facilities look, the different sizes that exist, but because in the past they had been regulated as warehouses, they were not needing to be a part of the building energy performance standards, which are so crucial for us to understand the use of energy for that. So there are a lot of holes simply because of the way they had been not regulated in the last several years. So those building energy performance standards are part of what is suggested in the EO, in the executive order and the resolution for the regulatory framework. But yes, I think a lot of the reasons why this is important is because we don't have a lot of the answers about what the data centers that are in our city, what they're doing and what benefit they have, as well as what environmental impacts they have, the impact on the surrounding communities. We know there is a lot of research being done in our city. We know that a lot of that research is relying on the data centers. So we have some sort of high level knowledge, but those specific, how much energy, how much water, how many jobs, things that are all part of what needs to be provided by the through the executive order and is part of the regulatory framework. Those are things that we need, which is kind of brings back home the point of why this is so important for our work now.
Thank you for that clarification. And then my second question for you relates to the resolution, which I know is just affirming, as a board, the existing executive order that was already passed by the mayor's office. It does have the stipulations, Section 5C here, which cover a lot of the things that we've heard public comment about, specifically as it relates to concerns from residents. I would just like to clarify, with the framework being established and with what's existing in the resolution, is this text subject to change and review from the Planning Commission, or in this passage with what's in the executive order, will it be limiting certain additions that the Planning Commission may need in the future?
Yeah, this is all just about the conditional use process and the questions that are asked anytime a data center is before that board now. So it does not limit what can be asked in the future, and it does not limit questions that can be asked during the committee. During the hearings. It doesn't limit questions that can be asked by the planning department at all. It's more what is required to be provided as a minimum.
As a minimum is the important note
for now. These are the questions that, with between the planning staff, the mayor's office, my office, many stakeholders in the community, and frankly, being very aware of the issue myself, and from so many people in this room, the types of questions that we need to have answered, which is why there are, fully 40 questions that each project would have to be able to answer about their project.
Okay. I do think that flexibility is important, so I appreciate you clarifying that this is not going to be a limited scope of questions and that it could be dynamic, because I do think that's an important point, just given what we heard in this room, that there are maybe tweaks and improvements that are necessary. Some people think it's not comprehensive enough. Some people think it's too comprehensive, but I think the important point in what we're starting to do here is have a conversation. And I agree with what you're saying about the fact that that's our job as a body, to regulate, to have conversations that we recognize are difficult. So I appreciate your clarification on that point. And I'll close by saying I do agree with a lot of what was said in this room, which is that St. Louis is in an interesting point. I know a lot of people reference things that are going on in St. Charles and O'Fallon and Afton, and I think it's important to remember that we are St. Louis. We are a major city. And I'll steal something that my constituent noted, which is that St. Louis has experienced all of these revolutions in a long time because we're a very old city. And in the 8th Ward in particular, we have some of the oldest industrial area. And what we've seen is that industrial area hasn't changed a lot, but industry has changed. So we can't rebuild in an area industry the way it was done before in the city. I think we need to look at how we do it differently, but it needs to be very intentional. And what I will say is I think your resolution does put us on a path to have those conversations, and I appreciate you bringing it, and I am supportive of it for that reason. But again, I think the regulations that we put in place need to be very intentional and not prohibit us from the growth we know we desperately need. So thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll just finish this up here. So I think data centers are relatively new still, and we're learning more about them every day. Artificial intelligence is new. The driving force behind the demand for data centers is AI, and so we're still learning more about that. But we're also reading that 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing. So I think we do not understand the demand for AI yet as a relatively new technology. And yet, I also know that community centers that have had communities that have had data centers put in them have seen detrimental effects to their quality of life. And it may be that new technologies may mitigate some of those issues. But as we pointed out, industry is often way ahead of government. And so I hear the need to slow down and get this right. And I agree with that. I know the city needs revenue. And as an advocate for development in St. Louis that benefits our city, I do see our declining tax base as a big problem for our city that hurts everyone, every part of our city. But I also know that we just got hundreds of millions of dollars of American Rescue Plan Act money, and we can barely spend it because we don't have the people to spend it. We don't have the employees to go out and do the work. So what St. Louis needs is people. And what data centers bring is not people. So again, I am hearing like St. Louis shouldn't be closed for business. I don't think anyone is saying that it is. I think we regulate uses every day. Like you have to get a liquor license if you want to open a bar in a neighborhood. This is no different than that. It's protecting communities, making sure that we're asking the right questions. So I think that the executive order that the mayor signed a couple of weeks ago really splits the difference nicely. I think it asks the important questions that protect our residents. And for those of you who came today to speak in favor of these, I understand the jobs are important, but I wonder what questions you'd ask if this was going to be built next to your house. So it's important to ask these questions and to get this right. I really appreciate your work on this, Alderwoman. I know that you worked closely on the executive order with the mayor's office, and that's how we ended up with this language. So I think you're doing a really nice job. I look forward to supporting this resolution.
Thank you, Chairman.
With that, you are recognized to close.
Thank you. I appreciate all the discussion today. I think it has brought to light so many pieces of this issue that absolutely need our dedicated attention. I think that opportunities for public comment are crucial in our city. I think it's so important to hear from the people who live, work, develop here. That is so important. We could have simply let the mayor pass an executive order and talked about it, not at all, at the Board of Aldermen, and just let that happen and not make it our responsibility to discuss and take a role, an active role in. And so that is why we have the resolution in front of us today. I think it is our responsibility to have these tough conversations, to be on the record about where we are at when we have these tough conversations. So people who live in our wards, work in our wards, develop in our wards, know where we're at, know the things that matter to us and to our communities. I've certainly gotten plenty of phone calls, texts, emails, Facebook messages, on and on, Instagram, from people on both sides of this issue. And so, there's so much room on both sides of the issue, so many things to agree with on both sides of the issue. But to me, it's about thoughtful, comprehensive regulations and supporting the development of those. And so that is why I wanted an opportunity for our board to begin to weigh in on that. As well as, like I said, this is the first time that there's been any public comment on this in a public forum in this way, and that's just crucial to me. I have so many people I want to follow up with in this room, and I hope people will still take my calls and emails after this. So with that, I would appreciate your favorable consideration of resolution number 111 and ask that you pass it out of committee with a do pass recommendation.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion at this time.
Second.
Please, sorry, if you could state the motion.
I move that we pass resolution.
Thank you. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 8th. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Alderwoman Boyd?
No.
Alderwoman ClarkHubbard? Vice Chair Schweitzer?
Aye.
Alderman Devoti?
Aye.
Alderwoman Cox-Entwee?
Aye.
Chair Browning?
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes and 1 no vote.
Congratulations, Alderwoman. This resolution has passed out of committee with a do pass recommendation.
Thank you.
With that, we will move to item number 6. Committee discussions, we have none of those, so we'll dispense with that item. Madam Clerk, any written testimony?
We have 86 written testimony. It's in the J Drive.
That sounds about right. And any announcements by any of our members? Besides that, we just like to go home. All right, with that, all members were present, so no need to excuse. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th. Call for previous roll. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.
Thank you all very much.